Hi friends, welcome to this series of videos about South Africa and Eswatini. This is the first part about Johannesburg and Panorama route and the safari in Kruger only, but there will be second and third part of this video as well, where I will focus on Eswatini and Cape Town and the surroundings of Cape Town. This is our entire route, so we landed in Johannesburg, took a flight to Mbombela to Kruger Airport, hired a car, drove around the Panorama route, and of course went to safari in Kruger National Park and drove to Eswatini. After that, we took a plane, direct plane to Cape Town. Again, we hired a car and drove all around, including visiting Stellenbosch and of course the famous Boulders Beach. If I were to include all parts in this one video, I'm pretty sure it would have been over an hour and a half long, and that's a little bit too long. That's why I decided to split it into three parts, and this first part is all about Johannesburg, Panorama route and safari in Kruger National Park, where we only spent one day, hence it's so short. In Johannesburg, we stayed for one night and we stayed at a hotel called Marriott in the Melrose Arch neighborhood, which is considered very safe. I will of course leave the links to all the hotels where we stayed and all the tours we took in the description of this video and in the pinned comment down below in case you are interested in booking some of these attractions and hotels as well. So Melrose Arch is a gated community. It's kind of like I would say a residential area mixed with a couple of restaurants and a shopping area as well. And multiple people told us that it is completely safe to walk even in the evening. So that's a good area to stay. Since we only had one day in Johannesburg, we thought it's a good idea to go on a tour because the tour would basically show us all the points of interest in the city, or well, if not all, at least some of the main ones. We couldn't find a group tour, so we hired a private tour, which was bougie, but it was also really useful, and we were really happy that we went on this tour.
So on your right side over here, this was the first house of Nelson Mandela offered in this area in 1992.
Our tour started in probably what is the fanciest area of the city called Houghton. Lots of politicians and diplomats live there, and as you've heard, the first house that was offered to Nelson Mandela when he came to power was also in this area, and he continued living in this area after he became a president of South Africa. But even now, lots of private schools are in these areas and people live hiding behind massive fences. After this area, we went to a very contrasting one that is located in the city center, and this area in the city center is probably one of the most dangerous ones. Our guide told us that it became much better in recent years, but originally he is from Congo, and when he came to Johannesburg from Congo 17 years ago, he actually went to this area and then he witnessed a murder in the first 5 minutes of being in this area. He got so scared that he immediately bought a ticket to Cape Town, and eventually he returned to Johannesburg about 7 years ago and became a tour guide, and he loves Johannesburg. And he says it has definitely improved in the recent years. The only thing that hindered the development of Johannesburg was probably the pandemic. The pandemic hit South Africa really hard, and lots of people actually lost their jobs and all their means of income. And unfortunately, the unemployment rate in Johannesburg stays really high. It's probably in the late 30s. But let's hope that it will improve again. The pandemic also affected the public transport really badly, and for example, people stole cable from lots of trains, which basically completely destroyed the entire train infrastructure. So you can see lots of trains just being stored in this area. It's like a cemetery of trains because it's not possible to operate them without rails and without cable. I've heard that some of the trains were relaunched, but the city cannot rebuild the infrastructure to support all these trains. Now, this is a very different area of Johannesburg. There used to be gold mines underneath these buildings. Later on, they basically built all these houses on top of the mines. But yeah, basically, all these used to be the gold mines, and there is even a sort of a statue dedicated to the mine cart. 28 people could fit in one of those carts, which is crazy. But yeah, Johannesburg history is really connected to the gold mines. The city actually started growing because of the gold mines. The gold was discovered in the city in the late 19th century. That's why there are not so many historical buildings in the city. Before that, there was not even a city, but it grew so rapidly because basically workers were brought from all around the country to work in the mines.
We call it the Stadium of Unity.
And of course, our tour couldn't miss one of the most important areas of Johannesburg, the Soweto township. This used to be a segregated area during apartheid where people who were working in mines were living together, but now it's actually quite a nice area of Johannesburg to live. There is no longer lots of poverty, actually quite a few wealthy people who made it good for themselves, made it big for themselves, decided to build really nice houses here, but they love the sense of community. That's why they decide to stay in Soweto instead of moving to a slightly fancier part of the city. Of course, there is still a lot of poverty. For example, those neighborhoods, they lack infrastructure and they are not in a great living state, to be fair. Now we entering another part of Soweto, Johannesburg, where very unfortunate events have happened in 1976, and there is a whole museum dedicated to these events. So these events were actually the Soweto riots, where mainly lots of schoolboys, teenagers and some activists were participating, and they were protesting against the introduction of Afrikaans as an equal teaching language together with English. So actually, people really hated Afrikaans in black neighborhoods because it was closely associated with apartheid, and Afrikaans was historically the language of the white Afrikaner, who were the descendants of Dutch, German and French people in South Africa. During this protest, police killed over 170 people just officially, and unofficially this number exceeds 700 people, and as you can imagine, it was a really dark page in the history of Johannesburg. Overall, the tour was very interesting and eye-opening, and if you have an opportunity, I definitely recommend taking a sightseeing tour in Johannesburg. I think if we had more time, we would have also gone to Pretoria as well, but unfortunately, we couldn't do it this time, so maybe next time. After the tour, we went out for dinner to a place that was just around 2 minutes away from the hotel. It was a steakhouse and we really enjoyed it. We had to go to sleep early because we had an early morning flight to catch. Lots of people actually decided to drive from Johannesburg to Kruger because it's just about 4.5 hours driving. But since we had to take a return flight to Cape Town, we decided to take a flight that was less than 1 hour long. We rented a car directly in the Kruger Mpumalanga airport, and instead of going directly to Kruger, we actually decided to spend a day driving the famous Panorama route because we've heard really good things about it. So the Panorama route actually starts about 1 hour away from the airport, and it takes around 1 hour, 1 hour 15 minutes to drive the entire Panorama route. And from there, we actually went back to Hazyview, and then the next day, we drove all around the Kruger National Park and slept in Marlow Park. So this was our little itinerary for the next 2 days. Some people also decide to spend a little more time in the Panorama route and sleep in near the 3 rendezvous. But now back to the Panorama route. Our first stop was a very beautiful waterfall. Our first stop of the Panorama route is the Makmak Falls. The entrance to the parking lot costs 16 rand per person, which is pretty affordable. There is also a toilet in case you want to use it. And in order to get the waterfall, you need to sort of go down the stairs. The path is really good, around 500 meters down on the way back. Of course, you have to go up, but it is really beautiful. You cannot see it without the fence, unfortunately, but it still looks pretty impressive. Panorama route actually has quite a few waterfalls, so we will see at least 2 more in this video. Our next stop was located around maybe 20 minutes away, but unfortunately we couldn't visit it. So the place we couldn't visit was called the God's Window, and it was supposed to be a very stunning, actually one of the most beautiful panoramic points of the route, but the visibility was almost zero. And when we entered the parking for God's Window, the security guy actually told us that we won't see anything, so it doesn't actually really even make sense to park, pay and go there. So sadly we couldn't see it, so we had to continue driving to the next waterfall, hoping that the visibility would be better. Our next stop was just about maybe 10 minutes away. It's called Lisbon Falls. Again, the entrance was 16 rand per person, and luckily here there's 100% visibility, absolutely perfect. I'm not sure actually which one we liked more, Mac Falls or Lisbon Falls. Let me know which one do you think is better. Since there are no restaurants nearby, we bought some food in a supermarket next to the airport, probably like 20 minutes driving, so we got some sandwiches, fruits, and there are lots of really nice picnic areas next to the waterfalls where you can enjoy your quick meal and also enjoy a really beautiful view. This is our next destination, another waterfall called Berlin Falls. We drove for about 7 minutes. Again, the entrance was 16 rand per person. And this one is so close to the entrance, you can see all the shops right here. You just need to go down a few stairs. Pretty much every single stop at the Panorama route has a few stalls with locals selling really nice souvenirs. So if you're looking for some souvenirs, this is actually really nice and pretty affordable place to buy them, and you can also support the local people and manufacturers. We drove around 27 minutes to the next destination. I honestly forgot the name. I think it's something like Lowville View. I'll write the name on the screen. But here there is no proper parking. We parked on a road, but there are sellers nonetheless. It's also free to visit, and the views are stunning. And this time we are lucky because there is no fog and no clouds, and it looks beautiful. You can already see the Blythe River Canyon from here, but the view is probably not as iconic as the view from the next destination, the Three Rondavells, but still I think it's a very nice place to just sit and enjoy, because the Three Rondavells is actually pretty busy and this one is completely empty. So we drove around 15 minutes to this one, and this one is probably, well, arguably the most famous of the viewpoints, called Three Rondavells, and the entrance for international citizens is 70 rand per person. And we are almost there. So I think out of all the places, all the stops on the Panorama route, this was probably my favorite, just because the views were incredible. There is a little bit of information about the Three Rondavells and the Blythe River Canyon on this map. You can see the Three Rondavells. There are like 3 hills, and their height, they look quite cute, but honestly the views are stunning. And this is actually the 3rd biggest canyon in the world. So the first one is of course the Grand Canyon. The second one is located in Namibia. It's the Fish River Canyon. And the first one is this one, the Blythe River Canyon. You can see how massive it looks like and how stunning it is. And I can understand why people decide to stay here for a couple of days, because you can do quite a few activities here. It is also very safe and conveniently located. You don't need to drive here for like hours and hours. It's relatively close to the airport and relatively close to Kruger National Park. That's why people usually decide to combine them both and do them together in one trip. And also I love the landscapes in here. They just look like a savanna. we were also driving back when it was around 5 p.m. So it was a golden hour. The light was incredible. The journey back to the place where we were staying overnight, the place called Hazy View, was really good at the start of a journey, but then the road actually became really bad. It was probably one of the worst roads we've ever seen. There were so many potholes, and miraculously we just didn't lose a tire or a wheel even, because yeah, it was quite tricky to drive there. But and the bad road was the last 30 kilometers of the route. But luckily we got there, and we went to have dinner in Nando's because we really wanted to try the South African Nando's, and it was a little bit different compared to Nando's in the UK. It had different dishes, and I actually liked it more here. I love the soups, and then mid-meal there was the electric cut-off, the load shedding, so there was no electricity, or there was an accident probably. So we stayed at a place called Little Pilgrims Boutique Hotel in Hazy View. Hazy View is a small town close to the Numbi Gate in Kruger National Park, so lots of people decided to stay here. Good morning. We were supposed to wake up at 4. Some people wake up on 4 and 5, but yeah, we couldn't. So it's 7:20. We're going for a quick breakfast, but we're gonna drive to the national park. The breakfast room looked a little bit like a Wild West saloon, so definitely very unique aesthetic. We liked it a lot. We had breakfast, checked out, and started driving towards the Numbi Gate. So there are multiple entrances to the Kruger National Park. When you enter, you need to register and pay the entrance fee. And Numbi Gate was the closest to us. We drove for around 28 minutes. So the fee to enter Kruger National Park for the foreigners is around 490 rand, but of course it might change in the future, so it's worth double checking the price in advance. In pounds, that's around 20 British pounds, which is a really good price. And I really liked the fact that you can drive your own rental car in Kruger National Park, but of course there are some rules that you need to follow. So of course the first and the most important one is that you are not allowed to exit the car at any point unless you are in a specific special rest area, or if you are visiting a viewpoint and the signs at the viewpoint explicitly tell you that yes, you can exit your car. And even if you do exit the car at the viewpoint, you need to exercise caution, because of course it's a national park, there are lots of wild animals. You are also not allowed to drive with your windows down all the time. You need to keep them closed. Of course, if you are like really far away from an animal and you're not disturbing anyone, maybe you can put it down a little bit, especially if it helps you to take a good picture. But you cannot just drive with your windows down during the entire trip. And the first very important advice that I recommend downloading an offline map of Kruger National Park, because otherwise you will be lost at some point. Google Maps actually has this free feature of downloading a part of a map, so we did that and it helped us a lot. If you're wondering what's the best time to start your trip, so the Kruger National Park actually opens at 6 a.m. and the animals are most active in the morning, especially the wild cats. If you want to see them, I recommend going, waking up very early in the morning and entering the park as early as you can. In our case, we did wake up a little bit late, but that's because we were a little bit tired from the trip, first of all, and secondly, it's not our first time doing safari. We actually spent an entire week in Kenya and Tanzania a few years ago, so we just wanted to do a really short safari in Kruger, and we didn't have a goal of seeing every single animal there is in the park. Lots of people come here for at least a couple of days. They come here for 2 or 3 days, and the rest camps are really nice. Going on a safari doesn't usually seem like a very child-friendly activity, but having been in Kruger now, I can say that it is actually indeed quite kid-friendly. I've seen lots of families with kids in the rest camps, and I've seen them in lodges all around Kruger, so yeah, actually it's a decent place to go with kids. In the very few lookout areas, it is actually allowed to exit and walk within the indicated area. But it's nice to exit and stretch the legs. And this is how a rest camp looks like. So this is Skuzuza camp. This is one of the biggest ones. And besides a large camping area, it also has a souvenir shop, a coffee shop, and a restaurant. We're so surprised to find such a nice restaurant. It's literally inside the Kruger National Park. It is in a Skuzuza rest camp though, but still it has quite gourmet things in the menu. And it looks really, really lovely as well. After having a lunch, we continued driving around the national park. We saw more animals. Unfortunately, we didn't see any cats at all today, and it is quite hard to see them, and you will definitely not see them during the day. There is an app you can download on the Google Store and App Store. I think it's called Sightings, and people actually upload, whenever they have signal, they upload the animals they've seen around the park. So in case someone spots a lion, for example, you can try to head there, hoping that there might be one. There are also boards of sightings of animals located around the rest areas, like this one. We arrived at the Lower Sable Camp, so it's another place where people stay, but there is also shops and facilities and just a rest spot and a restaurant. The views from here are stunning though. The restaurant faces the river, so I can imagine you can see quite a few animals here. We were in South Africa in the end of June and beginning of July, which is winter in South Africa, and it is actually a high season to do safari in Kruger National Park, but it is pretty bad time to go to Cape Town. But we didn't have an opportunity to go to South Africa twice in the same year or different years and split this trip in two, so we decided to combine it instead. It was not too hot, it was around 24-25 degrees actually, but it doesn't really matter too much because you're sitting in the car most of the day. And in June and July, the park closes a little bit earlier, so you need to leave the park by 5:30. That's when the sunset is. In summer, it's a little bit later until basically 6:30 and 6 and sometimes. So because we were visiting for a day, we left the park and started driving towards Marlow Park, which is a private sort of reserve where there are lots of hotels, and we've seen almost as many animals as we've seen in Kruger National Park, which was very surprising. We stayed at a lodge called Needles Lodge, which was absolutely beautiful. The price was great. We paid less than $100 per night, and the owners were so lovely. Every day they were having dinner with all the guests of the lodge together. So the dinner and breakfast were actually even included in price. Everything except for wine, but wine was also really good price and value in South Africa. And there were these lovely zebras that came to visit for dinner. They're wild. They just come in every day for some reason. And when we had breakfast, the monkeys almost stole some food from us. The workers of the lodge, they tried to shoo them away, but they still managed to steal some fruits. They were mostly trying to steal from the buffet though, so there was a little table with like lots of fruits, so that's where they were trying to get. On our way, we saw this wonderful giraffe as well. It was stunning. And we started our drive to Eswatini. And Eswatini will be in a separate video, so see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. See you soon. Bye!